What's going on, y'all? All right, today is Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. That's this trade recap today. As I mentioned yesterday, if you watch the recap, I'm telling y'all, watch these recaps. As I mentioned yesterday, today could be a little bit of a iffy day price action-wise. It's the day before FOMC, which is tomorrow, Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m., I will not be trading tomorrow whatsoever. But as I mentioned yesterday, the day before, it could be spotty. Like it may or may not be okay. So with that being said, typically on the day before FOMC, I will trade. I'll get on my chart and basically, if I get something that lines up just right, I'll take it. If not, I tend to want to sit on the sidelines. However, today was not really the case. So if you saw my X post or anywhere else in my Discord, which by the way, my Discord link is in the description. It is free to join, always will be free, never will charge a penny to join my Discord. Anyways, if you saw my post, I didn't have that. I mean, I came away green, but I'm not really happy with my trading today. And I'll explain why. So let's look at the chart here. The daily chart. As you can see, we reached down. Oh, by the way, I did roll over this morning as well. So that's another thing. All right. So look, we have this little bit of up and down action going here, right? Okay, now this was the candle for today. So I'm looking at the previous candle, which was Monday, right? So I had a high, a close. And as I mentioned yesterday, we closed this daily fair value gap on Monday. So I'm looking at, okay, we might reach down and then potentially could go back up to this area where I had all that buy side liquidity. Potentially. So that's kind of what I was looking at. So let's drop down to the 1 hour chart here. And we have this 1 hour chart, right? So I was looking at this swing level, the same sell side liquidity as yesterday, right here. Okay, so I was looking at that right here. To the long side, we had this swing right up here, which was relatively equal highs. And I'll drop down on my 15-minute and you'll see from there what that looks like. But I was looking here, okay? And then we had this. This is the 1 hour chart I'm showing you right here. Okay. And this is 9 o'clock hour. So this bar would close at 10 a.m. right here. Okay. So this had not happened yet, this drop. So I'm looking here and I'm kind of like, okay, here's a little swing on the 1 hour. Maybe it'll take that. There's a little bitty fair value gap here. Here's a little bit of an inversion here, but I'm looking at this as like a sell side liquidity, where if price did run up, I would like to see a drop through the open. All right, run sell side liquidity, and then let's go up and attack buy side. All right, so this quick pause in my trade recap is to answer a question one of my subscribers asked. All right, so it was asked in one of the last videos. How do you know if it's a high resistance liquidity condition day? Okay, great question. So there's a few ways that you can tell or have an idea if it's a high resistance liquidity condition day. And the two things that I really look for is on the 15-minute chart, do we have fair value gaps? So for example, today, if you're looking, we had a fair value gap right here at the open, right? So that's a sell-off right at the open. All right, so if I mark this, a 15-minute fair value gap. Now, after that, so when this one forms, it would be 9:45. This bar would close at 9:45. I start trading at 9:50. I look for an entry. So I see this happen. Then I think to myself, okay, we do have a fair value gap. So potentially, this could be a low resistance day because price could run back up or it could continue. We have a fair value gap. Great. Now, but look what happened afterwards. Where do you see a fair value gap? Nowhere. You see a little bitty one here at 12. But for the rest of the day, I mean, you don't see any more fair value gaps. on the 15-minute. So my first sign is there fair value gaps? And there's some mornings you'll see that we open up and you don't even get a fair value gap. So let's look here at the previous day, Monday. We opened right here at 9:30. Price came up and look, came wicked all the way back down. No fair value gap. All in this price action, there's no fair value gap. All the way till noon. Until afternoon, we get our first fair value gap here in the afternoon. So all this is telling me potential high resistance liquidity conditions. No fair value gaps on the 15-minute. So that's number one. The other thing that I look at, for example, today, if you have, or even Monday, if you have on the 1-minute chart where it creates fair value gaps and inverts them, creates them and inverts them, like back and forth over and over, and then reclaims them, and then creates them, inverts them, reclaims them. When you see that happening over and over on the 1-minute, that could be a potential sign for high resistance liquidity conditions. And you don't want that. You don't want to trade that because it just makes things really hard. So this is Monday. If I'm looking here, we had the open, right? Open, ran up. First of all, here's a fair value gap right here. Inverted it, right? And then we created this one right here, going down. Inverted it. When it inverted it, it left these going up. Came down, inverted it, right? And then it left this one. Came back up, inverted it. So like as it keeps passing through and closing through these fair value gaps over and over and over, then that is another signal for potential high resistance liquidity condition day. All right, so back to the video. Now, if you look at this right here, this up candle, this is the 1 hour still. This is a potential bearish order block because this bar ran this buy side liquidity, okay, and then dropped. So if I take right here and measure this out, look what happened. We came down, ran right up here. Look where the body's closed, right here in this order block, and dropped. I didn't really notice this until after the fact where I was like, man, price is not coming back up. What could it be? Well, this is a 1 hour order block. So I'll continue to watch this here. So I can actually mark this out like this, a 1 hour. This would be a bearish order block. Okay, so 1 hour bearish order block right here. Lock that in place just to see what happens. And then we had the inversion right here, right? So we had an inversion, bearish order block. So yeah, dropping. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So then let's drop to the 15-minute chart. And here we go. As you can see, here's that sell side liquidity right here, relatively equal lows. We had a fair value gap right here, right through that. So I'm watching that. Okay, so if I go here, I'm watching that. And then we had one right below it as well. So that way, if price does sell off at the open, this could potentially be my draw of liquidity right in this area. So if it does sell off, like I'm thinking, like I want it to, because right, I need manipulation and then it to go up. So if it does sell off, then I'd be looking for a market structure shift and a long in this area. That's basically my model that I'm looking for, right? And there's still lots of reasons why price could have went up, but there's still reasons why price can continue down. So going back to the daily chart, we're in this zone. In this zone of, man, like we have this sell side liquidity here, but we have lots of reasons why potentially we could head up. Let me get rid of this here. So I just have to kind of monitor the situation, okay? So let's see what happens after the. So I have the framework now. So let's see what happens after the open, okay? Now this is the 15-minute. I also had this right here, this 15-minute fair value gap right here. And you can see this is before the open, but we came down. Price went right up to the midpoint of it right here. And then we opened and dropped. So I'm like, ooh, that's pretty nice. Even back here, there's a couple of fair value gaps. Pretty nice. So I'm looking at a potential after this drop, a return, depending on what happens on the drop. And as you can see, with this drop, this sell-off, we did get this big fair value gap right here, this big 15-minute fair value gap. Okay, let me erase these other ones so that we were not cluttering up here. So as you can see, because we did sell off all the way to that area that I thought. And then, but we did get this big 15-minute one. So I'm thinking, okay, potentially we could trade back up into it a little bit. If anything, this is the 9:30. This is the opening candle, right? The sell-off at the opening candle. If anything, we potentially could trade back up to the low of the opening range gap. Maybe even this lower quadrant right here, which overlaps this 15-minute fair value gap. If we are going to try to be bullish later on. So that's kind of my framework. I was trying to see if that happens. Now, before this 15-minute fair value gap formed, let's drop to the 1 minute here. And let's go back in time. Here's our drop. And okay, here's this big fair value gap right here. We do reach this area, then I'm watching here. So pull down, pull up into this fair value gap, continue lower. Now, I made a little bit of a mistake. And I was watching this. See, we had this low, we had this high, and we made a lower low, and then we went up past it. So this is what I was looking at. I was looking at this as a potential breaker right here. Because we had this low, higher high, lower low, and then higher high. So with it, we had a little fair value gap right here. This is the 1 minute chart. And then I was looking at this bar as a potential bullish order block right here, because this bar took this liquidity. And then from here, it didn't. The thing I was missing was displacement, right? So we have this swing right here. We have this swing right here. The market went past both of those swings. So I was like, it's not like the best looking market structure shift because it didn't really displace. But I was like, right here, this could be an order block, a breaker, and this little fair value gap. We could trade back up to this area. So I had this high right here, right? So this was kind of going to be my target right there. It's like, you know, we may be able to trade back up to this. And if I get that trade, like from around this area, we're looking at like 60, 70 points. So I'm like, hey, that's not bad. So what happened was we shot down and hit this right here, this order block that I was looking at, which I figured that it would hit that since this little fair value gap was really small and is right by this order block, this breaker of what I was thinking all this was. So hit it, I entered, it came up, and it failed to displace. So when that happened, I actually got filled like a little bit higher because I didn't get a fill right here. I got filled pretty much like up here, somewhere in this area, which I can't turn on my, it's already past the time, the close, and I didn't leave my executions on. But I'll play the video in a minute. Actually, the video doesn't have this trade, but I'm showing you my loser. So I moved my stop up underneath this wick here. So I took a 60, 70, like a 15-point loss, which is smaller than my normal losses. And I had some copier issues on this one because I rolled over and my copier was all out of whack. So it was just kind of like bad. In hindsight, I should have just stopped there. But I didn't. I waited and I traded. So I waited. This, as you can see, It knocked me out here. And then it looked like, oh, it might go. But by this point, we had this 1 minute fair value gap. You see how it reached to the middle? Then it reached up into it right here again. And at this point, we have that 15-minute one overlapping. Let me find it. Here we go. We had the big 15-minute one from the drop overlapping. So now, let me go back. So now, that's the issue right here. Didn't make it up to that one, but from here, as you can see, it started a drop. Okay. And then we had this get inverted right here while creating this 1 minute fair value gap. And then also here was an inversion. So when price pulled down here, let me get rid of this now because this, I'm like, that's not a breaker. All this is irrelevant, whatever. So now we pulled down. So when we came back up here, I shorted right here. This is the video you'll see. I shorted here, but because I took that loss already, as we were coming down and we were failing to displace, I went ahead and tightened my stop and I took a small win, which basically recovered that loss and gave me a little bit extra profit. But here, and I got out. And then it reached up a little bit higher and then it dropped. And that was as low as it went. But yeah, you'll see that in the video here, but I just want to explain everything. And I really shouldn't have even done this, but man, whatever. Tomorrow I'm definitely not trading, so hopefully, it works out better Thursday and Friday. So here's the video. Let's go ahead and play it. As you can see, this is that area where we hit that 1 minute and we're coming down. I'm like, okay, now we're displacing down. We have all those fair value gaps. We have all that stuff. Inversions, like, yeah, it's gonna, if it reaches back up here, I'm gonna short it and take it down through at least to this low somewhere down here, right? Like it should go there. So let's fast forward a little bit. Now I have it marked out exactly what I just showed you. As you can see on the time right here on the bottom left, I was waiting for the 1050 macro on this one. So that's what I was thinking too. I was like, okay, it's 1050 if it comes back up into there. And there it is, 1050 right there. As we're pulling back up. Like, let's see if this macro delivers here. Pulled up. Let's back up a little bit. Pulled up, hopped in, hit the midpoint. And targeting this low. And watch as you see here. It's like, okay, this is looking good. But, and see, this is why I like to take one trade, right? Because it messes up my discipline. If this was my first trade, I would have just sat in it. But since I already took that loser, I was already having that copier issue and all this, I was like, let me go ahead and once I get a little bit of space in here, let me go ahead and move to break even fairly quick. Especially since right here you can see I'm looking at this little fair value gap that just formed. A bullish one. And I'm like, oh, crap. So here we go. Now I'm thinking to myself, okay, if we invert this, I definitely want to move to break even. And then if we close below this inversion, I'll move right above this inversion. And here we go. Showing my P&L here. So you can see I am trading my Apex accounts. See, it's on that inversion. So I go ahead and tighten up a little bit. So now I have about a 15-point stop. And if you combine my earlier loss with this one, if it was a loss, then that'd be equal about my normal loss. So now, as it's coming down below this fair value gap, I move to break even, like I said, plus cover costs and commissions. And I'm waiting to see if we close below it. Because if we do, then I'll just put it above that inversion. And if it knocks me out, it knocks me out. So let's fast forward a little bit. Here we go. We're about to close. We go ahead and close below it. So I move it down just a little bit. You know, we got the bodies closing here, and I'm kind of like, yeah, that's nice. The bodies are closing here. It may not reach back up. But now it's failing to displace. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just put it above this inversion. If it fails to displace and knocks me out, it knocks me out. If it displaces, then great. And then, you know, unfortunately, it knocked me out. And as you can see on the chart that I just showed, it ended up pulling all the way up here. Now, where my stop originally was, yeah, it would have went, but that's the psychology. That's the discipline messing me up because I knew I already took a loss. So I'm not going to risk what I should have or where my stop should have. So overall, I give myself like a C for my trading today. It happens. But that's what you're supposed to note. Like that, I don't need to play this anymore. But that's what you're supposed to note. You're supposed to write that down, journal it. What did you do wrong? What did you do good? Give yourself a grade and move on. You learn from it. So, all right. So I did a little better today. 17 minutes. I'm going to get these down to 10 minutes. I'm telling you, I'm going to. But that's all. All right. I'm not trading tomorrow. If you're trading tomorrow, I hope you have a great day. Be careful. I'll see y'all Thursday on my trade recap as long as I get a trade. So in the meantime, trade well, everybody. Take care.